topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hi, this is Shelby Wagner, and I am your host for Learning to Dance in the Rain, which is a conversation intended to offer things that I have learned and my guests have learned from living life to maybe help you to deal with your troublesome problems. And the goal, of course, is to return to a life of well-being and enjoyment, and that's what we want to do. Today, I'm very happy to introduce again Karina, who was with us last week. She started part one of her tale of love, deceit, and financial ruin. And today, she's back again, and we're going to continue that saga for this week and next week. So, Karina, welcome. Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Very good. Let's start right away. Oh, I wanted to mention that if you missed part one of this series, it is now on my website, learningtodanceintherain.com. And it is also on my YouTube channel, which is at Shelby Wagner. And I'm very happy to have those up there so people can go back and listen to them and tell their friends and send them to us. So, Karina, tell us. I'm hoping that you're doing well.
I am. Thank you. Very well.
Would you give us a little short recap of this romance and falling in love on the internet?
Sure. Yeah. So last week we talked about how I met my virtual romance. A fellow named Evan, who was originally from the Netherlands and had moved to the States 6 years ago, and made incredible strides in his financial situation by trading crypto, a feat that he learned from his uncle in Southern California. And when I met him online, we spent a good 6 weeks chatting back and forth, really getting to know each other and forming a very deep connection. And through that, he had offered to help me with my financial situation, which was still about $70,000 in student loan debt that was probably going to take me another 5 to 6 years to pay off. He had offered that if I had learned how to crypto trade with him, that I could pay it off by the end of the year. And this was last year, 2023, in the summer when I met him. Mm-hmm. I grew very attached to him very quickly. The romance was a faster pace than I had normally experienced, but it was also a romance that I had never had before, in the sense that this person had devoted so much time chatting with me on a daily basis and had incredible interest, almost excessive interest in my life. And he became integrated into my life very quickly, and it felt very good to be desired in that way, and to be interested in that way. I had never dated anyone in my life before who had paid so much attention to me. There was some obvious signs early on that I, potentially missed around all the love bombing, and maybe some of those typical, I guess you could say, narcissistic characteristics. But long story short, just as a recap for last week, I kind of walked the audience through the specific transactions and cryptocurrency trading and investing that I did into this platform that he encouraged me to use. And we kind of, I think, got to the point of understanding the level of anxiety and stress that had fallen upon me as a result of investing in this platform, because I didn't have the funds to invest. And I ended up having to borrow heavily from banks, uh, taking out a retirement loan, borrowing from my mother and friends, because all along the way, when I was attempting to complete the event with the help of Evan, he did also contribute um, to my account several thousand coins to help me finish what was called the event. Um, if the audience doesn't know what I'm talking about, I think they'll have to just listen to the first episode to hear how I got to be in the position I was at the final stages of me understanding that it was all a scam.
Did you find, that you felt helpless? Did you feel isolated? I read where, and I felt a lot of this was that there are a lot of emotional distress and so on that
Yeah.
people who are financially scammed have, that you might not have if someone broke into your house and stole things from you or things like that. What kind of emotional feelings did you have with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly stressful, and I did. I think what happened was, and I might have mentioned this last time, was the whole concept of what's called the sunk cost fallacy. It's a manipulation technique that's used, that Evan had used to um, have me continue investing in this platform, because I felt like I had already put in so much already, that to consider him full of deceit and to not be real, or that he was somehow behind the whole operation. When I had those thoughts at fleeting moments, I convinced myself otherwise, because I just couldn't fathom that I would be losing, the initial 35,000 that I put in. I had to believe in it so that I could at least get all of my money back. And it sounds counterintuitive to continue to put money into a platform, thinking that way. But because of all of his reinforcements, and telling me that I was thinking negatively when I was stressing or going in the wrong direction, as he would say, I needed to buck up and think more positively, that everything was going to work out in the end.
Mhm.
But essentially, what happened, um, and what kind of led to my understanding that this might not be real, was probably the final weekend when um, the platform wouldn't let me pull out the funds that I had put in, even after I had put in the necessary funds for the security verification. They froze both of our accounts, claiming that because Evan had put funds into my account, we had violated the platform, because two account numbers put money into my account. And that's when he started to fall apart and was saying he was a little bit of a mess. And and instead of him being the strong one telling me to buck up, I found myself telling him to buck up, and that we needed to figure this out so that we could both get our accounts unfrozen and I could pay off all my debt. And he started to kind of turn on me in a way that it didn't feel like he was my partner, or uh, it felt like he was kind of turning into a person that I didn't really know, in the sense that, he's like, I helped you. Can't you help me? We had to put another 55K into the platform to unfreeze both of our accounts, because that was the amount that he had put in to help me throughout the whole thing. He told me that he had put his client's funds into the account, and if his account was frozen, he couldn't trade, and he would not be able to pay his client. He was going to lose his business. He was going to go to jail. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I couldn't imagine he's going to go to jail. It's like, yeah, maybe he'll lose his business out of this because he's a fraudster putting his clients' money into this platform that is obviously not legitimate.
Mhm.
Um, and so I started losing faith in who he was and the fact that he seemed to have no liquidity to be able to help when I was in these trying times. And it seemed to be all up to me to come up with the funds to figure it all out. And then at one point I was exhausted and I was tapped out. I didn't have anything left, depleted. And I told him so. I was kind of telling him that all along the way, but he managed to push me into hustling to get and find more. But at this point, I couldn't. And I was just tired of trying to search for money and to finish this thing. And so once he told me that he couldn't help finish finding the money to finish this thing, he's like, let's ask chat support if we can get an extension. So I did. I reached out to the support chat and asked for an extension because we had a week and they gave me like another 100 or 72 hours or something. But after that time point, the interest or the debt payment would include a 5% of the amount that I still owed to unfreeze our accounts per day to add up, creating this urgency and extra level of stress. But I was starting to come to terms like with the concept that I think I'm going to lose all this money. And I'm starting to like strategize in my head. Okay, I guess I need to file for bankruptcy. I'm going to have to move in with my mom. Like, I'm going to have to sell all my stuff, like starting to plan it that way. And then just the embarrassment of like not uh, knowing what I was getting into or fully understanding it and having to admit to the people that I borrowed money from that, no, I'm not going to be able to pay you back in a month like I said I would because I'm going to cash out all my investments. I'm going to have to set up a payment plan with them to pay them back over time. And I'm telling Evan all of this, that these are the thoughts swirling around my head. Like this is all I can think of at this moment. And I even suggested to him, like, long term, he'll just have to sell one of his houses. And, he has this extravagant life. And I was kind of getting angry at the fact that he had this luxurious life. And how could he put me, somebody who doesn't have anything like that, in this situation? And again, just kind of starting to despise him for this whole thing and really not wanting anything to do with him. And I knew how to move the money around between the exchange and the platform and back to the exchange and possibly to cash out without him. I knew how to do all those steps. And so part of me was like, you know what, if something happened to him, like he got in a car accident or I never heard from him again, or he just disappears, at least I'll still know how to retrieve my money. Because I still, at the time, thought it was real. And that if we just finished this last final verification, we'd be able to unfreeze our accounts and get all my money back. I was so desperate though that I ended up calling my mom and she's like, I just talked to my husband, so my stepdad. She's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. So I talked to him and he's like, oh, this is so interesting. Like, I never heard of a security verification that high before. Like mostly banks will deposit $1 or, withdraw $1 from your account. But, this seems excessive. And I'm like, well, thinking in my head, he doesn't know anything about crypto and it's a different world. And maybe he just doesn't understand. But at this point, I'm asking them if they have the funds to help me unfreeze both of our accounts. And so my stepdad sleeps on it. And the next day he's like, you know what? He's like, I don't know how to tell you this diplomatically, but I don't, this Evan guy, he is not your friend. He's like, call Kraken and find out if your account can be unfrozen. It's weird that they even froze it to begin with, but just find out if you should be able to get all your funds back, basically. And I told him, I was like, there is no phone number. It's just this like support chat thing. And he's like, no, I have the phone number. He's like, look it up online. So I looked up Kraken, I found the number, and then I called them and I gave them my ID and my phone number. And they're like, "Do you have an email address associated with this account?" Um, and I said, "No, I never used an email to set it up, just a phone number." And they're looking and looking, and finally the guy's like, "You don't have an account with us." And I'm just dumbfounded, and I could feel like my heart, like in my chest, like just drop. Like that's not just a saying for a reason. Like I literally felt like, oh my God, is this really happening? And he said, "You need to go to the police immediately. Go to law enforcement and report this." And I'm thinking in my head, law enforcement, like, what is he talking about? Like, I don't, like, who deals with this kind of crime? Like, you can just go to the police station and tell them that, like, you've been scammed. And I still at this point wasn't sure if Evan was behind the whole thing or how it all operated and worked. But under his advice, and the guy was really nice, he sat on the phone with me for like 20 minutes while I'm sobbing. And so I go to the police station and I wait there for an hour to talk to somebody. And the police officer was very interested in finding out who the person was that I was communicating with, more interested in who he was than about the crypto or anything about the investing that I did. He relayed to me that his mother had been scammed, or mother-in-law had been scammed online. And so he understood the situation. But at that time, we were both very much thinking, Evan is behind this whole thing. He's the one who is scamming me, but I still didn't understand how he had access to the website, or he must have been like manipulating the website and everything that I was putting the money in all the while in the background. He recommended I basically block Evan, stop all communication with this person, and then I gave all the information I had about him to the police. And so it was almost like within this 24-hour period of time that I quickly came to terms with the fact that, wow, this whole thing was a scam and I've been manipulated. And then at the same time, the incredible stress and anxiety of the fact that I just lost all this money and I don't know how I'm going to pay everybody back. And that was probably one of the worst feelings I've ever had in my life, just coming to terms with that and understanding that I really am, like, how am I going to move forward from this? How am I going to get out of debt? How am I going to tell people what happened, or hopefully not have to tell? It was definitely a very, very dark place I was in. I even thought for a moment it would just be easier to escape, go away, disappear, and not have to deal with it.
Did you think about suicide?
Yeah, no, I did. I thought, in fact, that was probably the only time I felt relief, was thinking in those moments, like, well, I could make this all go away, all this pain go away.
Right. And pain
I
is
just disappeared.
pain is what it was.
Yep.
I know. It went through me too. In fact, listening to you brings tears to my eyes because it's
I'm sorry. I actually haven't gotten emotional about it in a while.
we have an emotional show here. There was a couple people that wrote in, and one person says, "Why, if you were suspecting that he was a scammer, why did you keep giving money?" For me, it was, I wanted to be right. I wanted it to work so bad because I needed that money to pay off the debts I had, so I really wanted it. And I can see you really wanted it too, because you wanted to pay off your student loans. So at what point did you stop giving money or deposit? Was that?
That was the last time, was the week before I found out it was a scam. Yeah.
Oh, so. Well,
but I think what's hard for people to understand, why are you, when you start to question it, because I questioned it with him and he always had some convincing reply for, laughing at me for even thinking that he could be the same person as the security officer, or that he was behind the whole thing. you know, it turned into like this joke, like, oh, you're crazy for even thinking that. And, he would remind me like, how much he loved me and thinking about our future and,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, to not question it. But I also think that people who have not gone through this, what they need to understand is that criminals have an exceptional way of manipulating our emotions. So it pushed us into a very like hot emotional state
Mm-hmm.
where decisions are emotionally driven. In this state, we're vulnerable to coercion, and we might actually ignore some of those rational thoughts that did come fleeting in from time to
Right.
time.
Right.
And so understanding those tactics removes the blame from victims because we are victims. And that's what I've really had to come to terms with over the last 6 months. And some
Mm-hmm.
people don't like the word victim. We say survivor because we're still here, and we've gone through this horrific experience. I think the romance fraud on top of the financial is what makes it, doubly devastating. So, um, again, I really think that people who have not gone through it will probably not truly fully understand what it's like. But what's really important is people getting out there and talking about it because if you don't, there's always going to be this shame and embarrassment associated with it. I know a lot of the people I've met in the peer support groups that I'm in still haven't told their friends and family. Um, and I get it because there's still some friends and family I haven't told. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's a need to tell people just for informational purposes.
Right.
In the beginning, when I found out, it was more important for me to tell people for just knowing I had their support. Um, and now I feel like I've gotten to the point after, we're about almost 8 months out now from me finding out it was a scam. Now I'm at the point of I just want people to know about this horrific crime so that they don't fall prey to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had a friend tell me, "Oh, that would never happen to me," and I say, "Great, that's good. I hope it does never happen to you." But what I want to remind people is, you can't tell me that in your entire life you've never been manipulated in some form or another. This is just one form of it, just one. And then I'll ask people, like, "Are you telling me you've never been lied to and
Mm-hmm.
you didn't know the person was
Mm-hmm.
lying to you?"
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah. So I think just to answer that person's question, um, no matter how smart, intelligent, educated you are, this can really happen to anybody. And to be in that emotional state, you have to be there to fully understand the coercive control that these
Mm-hmm.
the scammers
That's right.
utilize.
Mm-hmm. I told my daughter, no, I would not give money to somebody I didn't know. I would not be scammed. And I was, uh, I, I guess I never really knew, or I had forgotten what the word narcissistic means. But darn, that's as I've learned more about that, and people that have lived with a person that is narcissistic. Boy, these people are very good examples of a narcissistic person, aren't they? I mean, that laughing at you, and making you even feel more guilty. That's a narcissistic way to talk.
Yeah, no, I've certainly educated myself since on all those narcissistic traits and the things to look out for in the future. Should I date again? Or, I mean, to be honest, narcissists are around us everywhere in our family, in our workplace. It's just that understanding that difference between disingenuous and genuine conversations with people and understanding when someone is love bombing you, and the difference between what a healthy beginning of relationship looks like compared to an unhealthy one. Certain feelings that I had early on, the euphoria, which are normal in the beginning of a relationship, but the intensity of it, and the fact that I had realized I've never been with anybody ever in my entire life before who paid this much attention to me, and then the nervousness I felt about being addicted to this person's attention, um, that all of that are very careful things to look forward in the future as triggers. I had recently had been connected to somebody who was recommended by a friend as a potential love interest since the scam. But I already recognized the signs early on who this person was. I did meet them in person and talk to them on the phone, by the way. But I also recognized that this person wasn't showing up. They were saying things, flattering things, things that I felt like, wow, it felt like he was interested in me. And it felt good. But then he would never show up. He would never follow through. And that's a form of manipulation as well. Like he knew how to keep me engaged just enough to keep me there. And so those are just things that now I'm like, why was I triggered by that? Why did that upset me? And now I know why. I know exactly why. But yeah, no, I think one of the things that we wanted to get to a little bit was maybe the whole concept of what pig butchering is and the scam, the intricacies of it. But I don't know if you wanted to ask me more questions about
there were a couple
after.
more that came through. One of them was, do you think that he may have owned the platform himself?
Okay, well, this leads nicely into exactly what pig butchering is. So, great question. So a couple of weeks after I found out it was a scam, I was doing my own research on the internet, trying to understand this whole scam and how it operated. Did he have access to the web platform? So I Googled things like, cyber scam, crypto scam. One of the things I would urge people who are also potential victims of this kind of crime is there'll be a lot of companies, um, companies that popped up on my feed about helping you retrieve your cryptocurrency back as a result of this scam. I would be very, very careful and very wary if they ask you for money, because those are mostly going to be another scam because they're trying to target those that are already weak and vulnerable and just desperately want their money back.
Right.
So that's just a side note there. But basically what I did find, there's this company called Aura. It's a digital fraud company, or they investigate digital fraud. And they had published this article, the CEO, on pig butchering. It was the first time I heard that word. This was, again, a couple of weeks after the scam. And the police had my report, or wrote down my report, and they said they would get to it in 3 to 4 weeks because they were just swamped. And so it was sitting on the shelf. And while my report was sitting on the shelf at the police station, I was doing my own research. And I found out when I read this article about pig butchering, when I read it, I was just shocked because it went through sequentially, step by step by step, exactly what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my God, this wasn't a one of a kind. This wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a one-person job.
Right.
This Evan person probably wasn't even a real person. And this scam, what I learned is this highly organized crime that originates from Southeast Asia. And so basically what they do is it's an investment scam. And the goal is to gain trust of the victim by building that relationship. It can be romantic, platonic, or professional over weeks to months before bringing up cryptocurrency investments. It's methodical, it's targeted, and it's patient, which is why I think a lot of victims don't understand that what they're in isn't a scam because of that patience piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, that time and time and again, I thought, he could not be fake because he's spending so much time with me. So
And
basically the name,
and
yeah, go ahead.
didn't you say he contributed money to some there when you were
Yeah.
found in question? Yeah. So,
So I thought if he's helping me, there's no way this could be fake. He's putting some money into this thing. Yeah, again, methodical process. And so the name actually reflects, so pig butchering is that the victim is essentially fattened up gradually, which means that you're being praised and ready for the slaughter. And that slaughter, preceding the slaughter, is what's called the killing. And so that's where you're basically dropping all your funds into this platform. That's the killing. And then the ultimate slaughter is when you've completely depleted yourself of all, like every last cent you've donated to this thing. One thing I have learned is that the scammers are also victims too. They're being trafficked to scam centers in Laos and Myanmar and Cambodia and potentially Thailand, and they're forced to carry out this crime. So it wasn't just one person communicating with me, it was likely a team of people communicating with me, and they had scripts and probably, PhD level psychologists helping write scripts to converse with a plethora of different demographics, which is why when it's targeted, they look for professionals, working professionals, people that they think would have money, but not too wealthy. Although I have been reading in the news lately that some CEOs of banks and more very well-off people are actually getting scammed in the same way. So basically, pig butchering is called Shazhu Pan in Chinese, and it's translated to pig butchering. It started in Southeast Asia, and it's starting to spread across the globe. I have learned a ton and networked with several key people on LinkedIn that I found that are related to investigating pig butchering, that are on the crypto tracing side of it, but also law enforcement that are interested in helping to raise awareness. I think it's okay if I say her name, but Erin West, who's a Santa Clara County prosecutor, she is heavily involved in really spearheading and pioneering the whole movement toward educating law enforcement across the states on what this crime is and how to deal with it. And so one of the things that they do is usually steal the identity of somebody who's prolific online. And it wasn't probably till 5 or 6 weeks after I found out it was a scam that I actually found the true identity of the person that they were using to scam me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And he's a 48-year-old gay male living in Texas. And he's prolific on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media channels. And he knows he's being used to scam because he posts about it on his Instagram account. But when I first saw him and his videos and heard his voice for the first time, it was such a mind twist because I had this image of who I thought this person was, and it was completely different. Sorry, my camera fell. Yeah, it's completely different than what I thought. Anyway, it's interesting to say the least that when I looked through his profile, I found almost all the images that the scammers used on me.
You talked to this person personally who had his profile stolen.
No, I haven't talked with him. I've only seen his Instagram account. I actually tried to reach out to see if he was interested in helping raise awareness and for the cause, but I haven't received a response. So,
so you don't know whether he knew that his profile was being used?
He knows it's being used for multiple scams because tons of people keep reaching out. And I feel like when he posts on his account videos, he'll mention it from time to time. I follow him just out of curiosity now at
Uh-huh.
this point.
Mhm.
I don't think he's willing to meet with or understand what pig butchering is. I think uh, he might not be I don't know, in a place to or ready to learn about it. To be honest, I have no idea because I haven't spoke with him. um, but yeah, he's aware because he posts about it all the time. About my particular case, maybe not because he didn't respond to my messages. So
Mhm. Wow. So, what is the name of that site that you found the procedures, like a manual? Was it Aura, ORA, or
it was AURA, and
oh,
so
that one?
since
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so the CEO wrote an article about it, and that's how I
Oh,
learned about it. And since
okay.
then, I met people that were investigating pig butchering, like Aaron West and many others. And in fact, I've just recently taken a cryptocurrency course tracing through the connections that I've made, and I traced all my transactions, so I know exactly where the criminals took my money from the website and placed it into several wallets into what's called chain hopping, and then deposited into various exchanges where they convert it to fiat currency and move it out. So at this point, obviously, all the money is gone. I think one of the key things, and we can talk about this more next time, but one of the key things for law enforcement to be educated about this is the urgency of the action that needs to be taken once it's reported. So when I went to the police station and I said three key things, which was I met the person on a dating app, they moved me to WhatsApp within a few days, they had me invest in a crypto platform. Those should just be red flags for everyone in law enforcement to know right away, okay, this is a pig butchering case. And as a result of that, we need the addresses and hashes where you submitted the money to, and they can take it from there and use their resources to trace it and potentially seize some of it, the money that you've put into the platform, because it would have been, within hopefully a week of the time that you've deposited the funds. But one of the elaborate parts of this scam is that the patience piece, just going back to that fattening phase, the packaging of the pig, if you want to call it that, the victim, is they intentionally build this romance over time. And I think by having them um, and have me register for this event, like the way with which they had me drop in the money, it wasn't like I was putting in 150,000 all at once. It was sequentially over time.
Mhm.
And so as a result, like, when I was tracing it myself, I found that, oh, the first deposit that I made within 5 days, it was all moved out into another account or another wallet address. And
Mhm.
so by that time, I'm still involved with the scammer. I'm still in the relationship and I'm still investing in this platform. I'm still believing in it. And so over this whole month time frame, they're able to move the money so quickly that by the time I realize it's a scam, everything's already been moved out. And so the real only opportunity that I could have retrieved any of my funds back would have been the last transaction, which is like 3 days before I went to the police and realized it was a scam. But if the police
Very
aren't educated about it, then then it's a lost
yeah,
cause.
right. That was very interesting. Now, my experience was 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, I went to the police station. They just kind of pat me on the shoulder. And, we're sorry this happened, Shelby. There's nothing we can do about it, blah, blah, blah. So I was very interested just in following Erin West and her, um, whatever, her training around the world. She's,
Yeah.
yeah, and especially in Southeast Asia. And didn't she say that there was some resistance there to even worry about it, like there is in Nigeria with the, that's where the romance scams began in the first, and it's a country that the law enforcement doesn't really care about.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. So basically, with these pig butchering scams, they started in Southeast Asia. And when I say they're spreading, they're basically starting to recruit scammers, human trafficked potentially victims in Northern Africa. So they can, because they speak more languages than English. And so they can target more of Europe, for example. Right now, it's focused on the US and Canada, or the most cases of these are in Canada and the US. But the resistance that she might be facing is probably more within our own country, as far as getting buy-in from government officials and law enforcement and higher places to have interest in pursuing this transnational organized crime, because right now, it seems to be by civilians, affecting civilians and the middle class of America, essentially. So until, it happens to, I don't know, a senator's son or daughter or mother, when will it be taken seriously? But we also are just single people in local counties in California that don't have jurisdiction in Thailand or Myanmar or Cambodia, where these scamming compounds are located. And so what's happening is, for example, one of the exchanges that my funds went to is in Thailand. And that exchange can just tell us to screw off when we try to put in a subpoena to retrieve the KYC is what it's called, or just know your customer information, just to get the account information of the person whose account it went into. Chances are that account is basically owned by Southeast Asian farm worker who's agreed to have their account be used for money laundering purposes. Who knows? They're probably not the real criminal or enterprise behind the whole thing. There's a movement in Southeast Asia, from what I've been told, to educate locals in the area to avoid taking up job offers that seem too good to be true, so that they're not transported to these compounds and then used as human traffic victims to scam people, 12 to 14 hours a day under threat of violence. And that's what's happening. So that's why there's victims on both sides. And so, having that in the title, what is a 26-year-old Southeast Asian man and a 48-year-old gay man and a 46-year-old woman in California have in common, you wouldn't think all those three entities would be tied up in the same crime, but they are. And that's exactly how they are. Without knowing each other or knowing of each other. I don't know who my scammer was. And it was, again, not just one person. It was probably a team of people, because I've also heard and seen scripts that were published showing scammers talking to each other and getting advice from each other on what to say. Oh, she said this. What should I say in response to that would, make her feel good, or just getting advice. They have their own chat rooms as well. It's rather sickening, to be honest, because they also refer to us as their clients, customers, as if we're willing participants in the whole matter. On LinkedIn, I saw a chat snapshot of a scammer telling another scammer, oh, my client couldn't withdraw or transfer from their wire from their bank to whatever, crypto.com, and this week, because they've already done 2 transfers. And then the scammer, in response to that, says, well, you need to push harder. So it's just, I don't know. It was just sickening to see that. But they also have to, as potential victims of scammers, dissociate themselves from the fact that we're real people on the other side. And I thought maybe the reason they have teams is because they can't have one person truly getting to know us as victims personally, or on a level that maybe they would get attached. So they take turns.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I'm hypothesizing on that latter part, but I can imagine.
That brings up a good point, though, because I've been was on and off the dating sites for since 2017, so about 6 years, and there were lots of times that I thought, I don't think this is the same guy I talked to this morning or yesterday or something, because he didn't remember
Yeah.
something that I had said. And
Mm.
that should have warned me right then and there to stop talking to that person, right? I
Well,
mean,
we say everything in hindsight. There's so many things
right?
I look back and say, "Oh, I should have,
And
I could have, I
right,
didn't."
right. And another
Um,
thing, I think what you said about them calling us clients or customers is that I had learned back then that we go, if we've given money, we go on a suckers list. And I don't like that name at all, but ooh, it fits.
mhm.
It really does. So, but I had the book Scams up here, my latest book, and it describes about 150 different scams, and it's meant to educate the public so that you can recognize one before you lose your money, before you lose your heart. Golly, lots of times the guys were, oh, I love you. The second day they were writing to me, and I thought, this is ridiculous. How can that possibly be true? So
Mhm.
anyway, and my book, Learning to Dance in the Rain, was written 2 years before that. And at that time, there was $145 million reported that was lost to scammers in 17, 145 million. Well, I just saw $6 billion was lost in 2021 to fraud. I mean,
Mhm.
isn't the law
Yeah.
getting involved and interested in that? And I have someone going to be talking with me in a couple of weeks, after we get done. Um,
Oh,
uh,
great.
yeah, and maybe I'll learn some more there. But thank you so much.
Of
We're
course.
almost out of time. Do you have anything else you want to say before we quit today?
No, I was just gonna add to your stats too. I think for 2023, it was somewhere around 2 to 3 billion that's so far been accounted for
Uh-huh.
specifically to pig butchering. So not just all romance scams clumped together, but specifically that kind of crypto investment scam
So
with romance.
I'm excited today to hear what Karina has had to say, because her experience is more recent than mine. But wow, I'm glad to see some improvement coming along there. And I wish you all will come back next week and hear our third part. Thank you for being here, and bye. Thank you, Karina.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week. Same time, 12 o'clock.